Hello and welcome to Cairns Catches Up. Tom Cairns, your host, where I speak to people within the automotive world about their careers, the challenges they face, and perhaps the advice they could share on those who want to pursue a career in motorsport. Now, today's guest is someone who some may regard as the modern day voice of Formula One. He is the former commentator of Formula 2 and Formula 3, and he's commentated on many other championships, including the 24 Hours Le Mans part of the World Endurance Championship. It's Mr. Alex Jacques. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for having me, Tom. Great to be here.
Absolutely so. Where do you want to begin, AJ? Because you've had quite a career, haven't you, so far? Um, where did it all begin for you? Because, as far as I'm aware, you've commentated on many sports, not just motorsport, but just
Hmm.
take us back to the beginning of where it all perhaps started for you. How did you sort of get into commentary in the first place, or where did it all start before you maybe got into commentary?
Well, I found Formula One by accident in 1998, flicking through the channels. We had four channels at the time. That's how old I am, Tom. And flicking through the channels, found the red flag gap post accident in Belgium, 1998. So DC had already gone off, the field had already collected themselves, and I flicked over at the exact moment that Murray Walker and Martin Brundle were filling the airtime. And I was 9 years old at the time, so I was trying to understand what happened and just sat with my face on the screen. And I've loved Formula One ever since. It's always been my sport. It's always been the thing that I've loved the most. So it was always a it's a pretty long shot ambition to try and commentate on motorsport. You don't think in grandiose terms like that, but I've always loved sports TV and a fan of so many sports broadcasts growing up, and was watching everything that BBC and ITV would show back in the day in my childhood. So the ambition was to go into the media to try and be a commentator, and I did that through first Community Hospital Radio, and then BBC Radio Suffolk, where a brilliant sports editor and so many careers, Tom, have pivotal moments, and one of the key pivotal moments for me was a guy called Graham McLaughlin, who is just this outstanding. And I have to say, this really does speak to the quality of BBC local radio. You have so many great sports editors having a complete overview of the local scene and looking for young talent, and giving people an opportunity where perhaps they wouldn't get a go if it was a different environment. So I'd come out of university, I'd done some commentary on non-league football for YouTube channels, and anyone who would have me, anyone who would let me hold a mic. But the first person to put me formally on the radio was this guy Graham, and then he gave me great advice. He liked the way I did it. He was very encouraging, and then he lent me very expensive equipment to be able to do it for other BBC local radio stations. And so as a result, I became the guy that you went to when you didn't want to send anyone. So funny enough, BBC Radio Leeds didn't fancy sending anyone to Cardiff. But when you're young and enthusiastic and you have someone who's lent you the equipment, you can go to Cardiff to cover Cardiff versus Leeds. And I just replicated that all the way through. So that's how I got my start. And that was about 2011 that was all going on.
Nicely done. And as I suppose it comes down to like being proactive as well, because whilst you may be on a limited budget where you are, but have the equipment supplied to you by someone to go to these places like Leeds or Cardiff, let's say,
Mm.
it does tell you something about the person who is able to adjust to the lifestyle in a broadcast environment, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the one thing, so you're not making any money in those early stages when you're doing BBC local radio. So I added to that, working for a sports agency, and they would need a written match report. If a newspaper couldn't send a reporter, they'd turn to the sports agency and I'd say yes. I'd say yes to absolutely everything. And that would be a key part of the advice about trying to take as many chances as possible. Because what happens is you then get into the rooms where the people have the experience. And there are so many great rooms when it comes to print journalism, when it comes to overall press conferences, or just a press room covering any sport, where there will always be someone in there who's willing to give you advice. You will learn something from every shift that you did. So that Cardiff Leeds match that I did is quite a big game. If you look at the football pyramid of the UK, so I did non-league, eighth tier, sixth tier, just below League Two, then local radio for BBC Radio Essex and BBC Radio Manchester, and then League One. And then this was my journey up to the Championship. But there was always someone in a press room who was willing to give you, oh, this is how you do it. This is how you collect it. This is how you deal with a manager who's in a terrible mood. Like, this is how you know not to ask. If the vein in the side of his head is popping, don't ask anything different. Like, just loads of wonderful pieces of advice from just saying yes to as many opportunities as possible. But crucially, you don't make any cash doing that. It's all about the experience. It's all about the opportunity. And that's why I'm so appreciative to Graham Mack, because without his loaning of the equipment, I wouldn't have been able to make it to Formula One.
Onto the motorsport world.
Yeah.
You were given the opportunity to commentate on what was the GP2 Series in 2015. Will Buxton was formerly the commentator of that before you had arrived.
Yeah.
How did that come around? Did it come as a surprise to you, or did you have this level of optimism within yourself, thinking that I've got every chance of nailing this opportunity in my back pocket?
It's a strange one. So what happened was, I'd spent 4 years going around the country building up a show reel for a moment like that to arrive. And I got the flu. I was in bed. I'd binged all of the West Wing, and then the West Wing had ended. I'd run out of West Wing episodes to watch. And I was just killing time. And I saw that Will Buxton was giving up GP2 and GP3 commentary duties, and thought, well, I've got 4 years worth of sports commentary. I've got 4 years worth of freelancing for anyone that will have me, primarily radio stuff, but also some TV highlights as well. Excuse me, some TV highlights as well. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to get on the producer's radar. I didn't think I was going to get the gig. I was astounded to get the gig. But what I wanted to be is the guy that they turned to. I was like, I'll send it in. Hopefully they'll like it. I think it's a good 4 years worth of highlights. It's about 15 minutes that I sent them in terms of an overall clip length and video highlights. And it was basically just a Dropbox with all of my stuff. And it's like, here it is. If you like it, like, give me a ring. And they did. What I didn't expect to happen was they then say, hey, do you want to do some races for us? But it was to get on their radar and sort of be a first reserve, because I assumed that they'd have someone in mind. And then, as it turned out, the person they had in mind was me. So I got extremely fortunate with the timing of that. Fortunate that I even saw Will was giving up. Didn't know Will at the time, just read it on his blog. Fortunate that I was able to get in the room with some key producers. I had revised all the questions that I thought they were going to ask me, and they were like, okay, pitch why you want the job, basically. So I had to kind of appropriately pitch for what I thought it should be, how I thought it should sound, how I thought it should differ, and how I saw it developing. And then incredibly, they put me on a plane to Bahrain in April 2015.
Nicely done. And what was the feeling like going into that race weekend in 2015 in Bahrain? Because I couldn't. It must have felt like a kid's first visit to Disney World, where their eyes are just wide open with everything being. Yeah, it's just like, wow, I'm here.
That's a brilliant way of putting it, because I'd been an F1 fan since I was 9 years old. I get this job when I'm 26. I've gone from working Monday to Friday at a newspaper, and then this has come along. It's a very strange thing to get an opportunity. So it's my dream job, right? As I've described. The thing about dream jobs is that no one ever explains how hard it is to do your first day in them. And yeah, it was overwhelming. It's the worst nerves I've ever had in my life. I mean, in hindsight, you look back and you go, it was 4 sessions, Alex. What on earth were you? It was practice, it was qualifying, and it was a sprint race and a feature race. But when it means a lot, when it's been building up to that, when it's attached to your childhood, when your family are going to be watching, that's a level of pressure that's fairly rare. And yeah, I felt incredibly nervous. And as a result, in the first half of the, I mean, look, no one aces anything straight away, but it didn't sound quite right. Didn't sound how I intended it to sound in the early days. And yeah, the nerves were, Disneyland is a great way of putting it, because you're on the Grand Prix weekend and everyone who's surrounding you, it's normal to them and it's extraordinary to you. So you're like wide-eyed and everything is a novelty. Everything is exciting. And they're like, oh, really? Is excited by the cars going out on track? And it's not that they're jaded. It's just that it was their office and it was the grandeur of a Grand Prix weekend for me. And also going, that was my first like proper live TV. So I was going primarily from the radio to live TV. So that was a learning curve as well. But they were great days. But yeah, very nervy on that first one.
Oh, I can imagine so. And, GP2 back then, Stoffel van Dorn was the champion at the end of the year, dominated that season, thinking of it, before he eventually got his opportunity at Formula One. As the years progressed, how long was it before Formula decided to maybe give you more of a chance on the commentary or even just voiceover and stuff? When did that come around for you?
There were considerations really early on. In truth, they I think from the middle of 2016, I felt way more in control of taking the commentary in the direction that I wanted to. I'd had a bit of experience with working with the gallery, and I think there was just a confidence that built there. And then we did various trials where we did a trial race at the end of 2016. And then from 2017 onwards, I think there was always an intention that there would be a commentary. It's just, where was it? There was always an intention that it would head in that direction. But I got to be really clear about it. One of the reasons that they gave me an inexplicable opportunity to do GP2 and GP3 is I told them that I would sweat it as much as they would sweat Formula One. And the one thing you've got to realize about the setup when it comes to the gallery in Formula One is that the same operators are in the gallery for Formula 3, for Formula 2, and Formula One. And I made the distinction of, well, I'm going to be the GP2 and GP3 commentator. I love those championships. I think they're incredibly exciting. I want to reflect that on the broadcast. And equally, if that's all I ever get to do, I have been luckier than almost anyone else in broadcasting. So I was very happy to make that my thing. So as much as there were discussions about, oh, can we do this for Formula One or can we do this for Formula One? My focus was completely the second and the third tiers, because the racing was amazing. And I think it's a little bit duplicitous if you come in and say, hey, I want to be your second tier and third tier guy. Oh, by the way, do you need someone to do X and Y when it comes to one? So my focus for a very long time was Formula 2 and Formula 3, or GP2 and GP3.
I reckon that Formula 2 and Formula 3 have improved in terms of the championship action, because I feel like most of the time when they are on the Formula 1 support bill, it tends to put on the best racing of the whole weekend, because we all know that Grand Prix, I think most of them can be rather average, because it's very rare you're going to get a great race that people remember for a long time. Like, you think of last year, I thought there were 3 or 4 races where there were complete standout ones. Others were just the usual kind of races that fans tend to perceive. With Formula 2 and Formula 3, there's always a great chance you're going to get a brilliant race out of it.
It's different. It's almost different types of food, isn't it? I mean, Formula One is your Michelin star, top of the top, but sometimes it can be more satisfying to have a really sloppy carbonara. And that's not to, excuse me, it's not to knock anything, it's just different types of entertainment, isn't it? And you get some thrilling wheel-to-wheel action with some driving that perhaps isn't as accomplished. That's the joy of it. You get to see the drivers become the complete article as they rise up from the third tier to the second tier, like we've seen with George Russell, like we've seen with Charles Leclerc, like we've seen with Oscar Piastri. As they climb their way through, you get to see them improve and correct errors, and the days they do make mistakes. One of my favorite seasons behind the microphone was watching Pierre fight against himself, Antonio Giovinazzi, and Helmut Marko in order to finally win that title, having gone within, over 1,000 days without winning. And then suddenly he starts winning races again and he gets his chance in Formula One via a route from Japan. But seeing a driver who at that stage of his career was fast and fragile become better and better and better as he went, it's just so satisfying. It's just so entertaining. And the racing you get in 2 and 3 as a result is thrilling. The joy, the joy of it is that when it gets refined to Formula One, is that a great overtake is an epic overtake. A race that comes down to a last lap pass is stand up from your seat exciting. So you get different types of entertainment with it. But everyone wants the entertainment of Formula One, and everyone wants to see those big moments. So it's as an overall package on a Grand Prix weekend, it's amazing. It's absolutely fantastic when you've got 3, 2, and 1 there on the same weekend.
Talk us through your routine going into a race weekend then. Let's say in 2021, because you commentated on F1, F2, and F3 during that time. How intense was the preparation in regards to research? Because I'd imagine the amount of research you had to do day by day by day had to be very, very extensive.
Yeah, it was intense. It was intense. But equally, if you go back and tap me on the shoulder when I'm in school and say, hey, you get to commentate on Formula 3, Formula 2, and Formula 1, that's what I wanted to do. That's the reason I tried during exams. That's the reason I went to university. The whole thing was aimed at having that opportunity. And that's probably why I carried on for so many years with Formula 2 and Formula 3, even though I was getting opportunities, like say 2021, I was working for Channel 4 doing their commentary. That's a national Formula 1 broadcast. That's, again, an extraordinary responsibility. But equally, it had become part of the process. It's a great question. It had become part of the overall get yourself into a cadence. And it was almost part of the commentary match fitness in terms of they split 2 and 3 that year. It's the only way I was able to carry on doing all of them. They'd split the rounds where it was F3 one week, F2 another. And in 2020, I did everything that appeared on a Grand Prix weekend. That was a very, very strange year, obviously, for everyone around the world. But I did the Porsche Super Cup, Formula 3, Formula 2, and Formula 1. And I can tell you that doesn't make a lot of sense from a broadcasting point of view, because by the end of final laps of the Grand Prix, I was exhausted, delirious, excited, all of these things. So some of those 2020 commentaries on the Pit Lane channel by the end of the Grand Prix were slightly unhinged. But routine and preparation, slightly different things. So obviously everyone has way more information for Formula One. So you have to look at what's the relevant information. So you're being picky with your stats. You're being picky with your news lines. You're being picky with your quotes. You're obviously introducing with Formula 3 and Formula 2, the people, the teams, the personalities and the drivers. You're basically painting more with primary colors. You're saying, this is why you should care about this driver who's currently 4th and trying to get 3rd. And with 2, you're obviously linking it more to Formula 1. So how you would research those things and the elements that you would research, that is how they would differ from 3, 2, and 1.
I see. And though you've mentioned the 2016 GP2 battle between Pierre Gasly and Antonio Giovinazzi, throughout your 10 years on commentating on the support series, which have been the standout moments for you from a commentator's point of view? So maybe not necessarily the outcome, but the quality of commentary alongside it. Which ones would you say you feel so glad to have absolutely nailed that piece of work? Like you think,
yeah. No, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Very rarely in commentary do you feel that you've nailed it. I mean, there's like a handful of races where I was like, well, I didn't have a better performance than that. There's usually something that you come away with and you're like, there's just that thing at the end Oh, there was that thing on lap 32. But in terms of satisfaction and being part of the overall broadcast team and being able to add words to the pictures, the years that were thrilling to me were 16, 17, and 18, because you knew you were commentating on stars. 18 especially, it's just a stacked grid. You had George Russell, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Nick de Vries. The racing was glorious. You would get so many competitive moments. The overall, yeah, you had Artem Markelov passing 4 cars on the last lap. You had things that just shouldn't happen in motor races happening in 2018. And 2017 that car was wonderful, and it was light and it was nimble, and you had so many races go right to the end in dramatic moments. And I just honestly, from the start of GP2 in 2016 to the end of the F2 season in 2018, I don't think we put on a bad race. I don't think there was a bad race to watch. And the commentary was joyful. It was glass half full. It was positive. It was fun. And it was a thrill to be part of. And that's not to have a go at any of the other seasons. It's not to be negative about any other seasons, but it was a amazing thrill. And it was always a thrill going through. But that year peaked with, I think my experience in the second tier peaked with 2018, because it was just so much fun.
I've always loved Formula 2. I started following F2 and F3
Mm.
in 2017. Obviously, F3 was still GP3 back then, but the racing they put on was still brilliant. But 2017, I would say, was the first religious year I started following Formula 2. And I even remember in 2015, I was on holiday with my family. I turned on Sky Sports F1 because the Sky Box was available and we were able to watch the Sky Sports package on there.
Mm.
I turned it on. It was the Austrian Grand Prix weekend. You were commentating, I think, on GP2, and I thought, this is a different voice to what I'm used to. I thought it'd be Will Buxton doing it. But just this guy is just brilliant. I think when fans tune into something and they hear a different commentator, it has this unfamiliar feeling within them thinking, I better make sure I get used to hearing this guy. And soon enough,
Mm.
they do. I'm like that. And that's not that I have nothing against you, or I had nothing against you at the time,
Yeah,
because
I know what
it
you mean.
is,
I know
yeah,
I know what you're describing.
yeah, it's the new voice feeling that people get used to time after time.
Yeah, a lot of broadcasting, a very famous person in Formula One, who I won't embarrass them, but they said to me very early on in 2015 is, look, your peaks will be great and people will be happy with the big moments. Do not let the level drop below a 7 out of 10, because the way that you succeed in broadcasting is consistently posting a base level that never drops below a certain point. And they were absolutely right about that. The peaks are satisfying when you get them right, but your overall consistency and basically making sure that you stick around as long as possible is a large part of people getting behind you as a broadcaster. And longevity is the name of the game. If you can stay broadcasting, you're going to get more big moments. If you can get more big moments, you can have more opportunities to call it correctly, to call it in a way that people will respond to. And yeah, as you say, you get used to new voices pretty quickly, but there's always an element. I'm exactly the same, right? I'm an avid sports watcher. I'll watch almost any sport on TV. And when it's a commentary voice that you don't realize, you lean forward and you go, oh, who is this? And then you hope for their sake that you enjoy the next half an hour of their work, because otherwise you've formed an opinion, which made my slightly slow start in 2015 just terrific to come back from. But yeah, it's a phenomenon that you've absolutely got to be aware of in the box as well. If you take on when I went to Channel 4 in 2021, I was acutely aware that I'd built up a nice reputation, and I'd done some good work up until that point. And then essentially it's like a company that's done really well suddenly being listed on the stock exchange. Suddenly you're back to zero and you've got to perform week to week to week, and your share price goes up and down. And I was aware of that, and yeah, it was an entirely new challenge.
Mm-hmm. Formula One, then,
Mm,
your first commentary. I know you mentioned Channel 4 in
yeah,
2021, but I'm sure you did some races before then for F1 TV, didn't you?
yeah,
And the
yeah.
one
For the
moment
pit
that,
lane channel, yeah,
for the pit lane channel, yes. The one race that comes to mind was Pierre Gasly's win for AlphaTauri at Monza. That
yeah.
which was the first race for a team other than Red Bull, Ferrari, or Mercedes to win since Kimi Raikkonen won in Australia for Lotus in 2013.
Right.
What must have that felt? Say, I've given you a stat there for future reference, haven't I?
Yeah, I love that. I definitely I didn't say that on the day, mate. So nicely
Okay.
done.
um, how moment? How much weight did you have on your shoulders at that time to think you've got to nail the minimum 7 out of 10 commentary performance for something like that? Given it's
You're
Formula One.
yeah, you're not thinking in those you're not thinking in those terms in the moment when you're on air. You're thinking about maybe those terms when you get a new opportunity or you're in the opening weeks of a job. When you're in the middle of a commentary, and I remember it, there's a great moment. I was commentating that day with Alex Brundle. We're on what was essentially a side channel for F1 TV at the time. Um, and obviously, I have a wonderful rapport with him. It's like a yin and yang thing on air, and I've been, and honestly, this is where I've been the luckiest. The people I've got to co-commentate with, it's just an absolute group of all stars, and it has made it just so fun. It just made it such a really enjoyable decade across the board. So with Alex, I know that he can match my intensity. He can, and if he thinks I've been very, very loud for a number of laps, which has been known to happen, then he will bring it down. He will be intense. He's got such a good reading of what the audience needs to hear next. There's a great moment that I just remember smiling as I said it, where I was like, the driver in first has never won a Grand Prix. The driver in second has never won a Grand Prix. The driver in third has never won a Grand Prix. Driver in fourth never won a Grand Prix. And the order at that point, and this was correct at the time, was Gasly, Sainz, Stroll, and Norris. And so, as a commentator, at that moment, you're going to go, we've got a major result on our hands. No matter who wins, as long as we don't get a safety car, we're going to see a brand new winner. This is an incredible thing. I can't remember what number he was 111, 112, 113 at the time, but this is rare. We started in 1950. New winners this is a special moment. And obviously, I'd covered his career and seen his trials and tribulations. The fact he was astounded that he won the GP2 title. He'd been told all the way through, win the title, off you go to Toro Rosso. You're going to get promoted to Formula One. And he won the title. And they said, off to Japan you go. You didn't win it in the way that we wanted. So high is the bar with that Red Bull Junior program at the time. Inexplicable, really. So he'd gone through a real roller coaster of emotions. He'd obviously lost his friend, Antoine Hubert, the year before. He'd been through the promotion and the demotion. And in that moment, you're maybe bullet pointing. Certainly towards the end, you didn't know whether it was going to be Sainz or Gasly. So at that point, as a commentator, you draw a line down your grid. It's usually at the bottom of the grid. So the grid printout is like that. And at the bottom, you've got a bit of white space. And down I was like, okay. So you write down the stats. Gasly would be the first French Grand Prix winner since 1996. You write down Sainz would be the first winner since Fernando Alonso from Spain. And you get prepared with all of your detail. And then you think about maybe 5 minutes before, what do I want to highlight of their story? And for Gasly, it was something about him keeping a great attitude when he got demoted, and this was his reward. It was something like that. And you probably think of the moment that if Sainz gets by, it's going to be so late on. You'd list heartbreak for Gasly because it would have been brutal if he'd got so close and lost. And then you'd think about the three things you want to highlight for Carlos, and then on you go. You react to the emotions you feel at the time, and you most importantly speak to the pictures, which is why you don't try and script anything or form anything more precisely than that. But you're not thinking, oh, I got to get this right. You're enjoying it because you're about to see someone have the best day of their life so far.
Absolutely. So I think that's the most important thing is just enjoy it without treating it like it's a chore. That's the way I tend to
Yeah.
look at it. Because I've done like a lot of commentary stuff in my spare time, mostly involved in the virtual motorsport championship.
Yeah.
I do prepare some research, but I treat it like it's a raw reaction, not
Yeah.
scripting anything. Just watch what's happening and just treat it as though you've got nothing in front of you. That's
Yeah.
that's the way I tend to.
The key emotional moments, so an emotional first win, it has to feel of the moment. Otherwise, the audience are smart. That's the thing with motor racing. The audience are really smart. So they'll know you can't get around the audience. I found that in the early years that um you'd sometimes read a critique of your commentary, and some of it was so helpful because the audience is so engaged and so precise. You'd be like, actually, no, I do say that word too much. Cool. Thank you for that. That's really handy. But that's why the reaction has to be natural and of the moment. And because an exclamation or the timbre of your voice at that moment just won't sound the same if not.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. I mean, you arrive at Channel 4 in 2021. Ben
Yeah.
Edwards was previously the lead
Yeah.
commentator. He did come back for the two Austrian races because Billy Monk had
Mm.
contracted COVID, and because you had been in the commentary position alongside him, you had to self-isolate, didn't you?
That was a memorable weekend. Yeah. So I hadn't missed a race from my first race in Bahrain in 2015. And then we get to 2021, and yeah, Billy comes down with COVID. COVID rules very strict at that time. And then Ben came in for one. We had a double header in Austria, Styrian Grand Prix and an Austrian Grand Prix, and Ben came in for one of the weekends. DC had to present, so yeah, Steve Jones was isolating as well. Half our team was isolating. I mean, it's one of the most unhinged broadcast weeks for that fantastic team. And we're stuck in our rooms, and that is an experience when you've wanted to be an F1 commentator all of your life, got this amazing opportunity on Channel 4, and then and then you have to sit in an Austrian hotel room and watch. I remember Lando Norris nearly took his first pole position, and I'm watching it going, if I miss out on, and it's very rarely do you ever think in these terms, but you're like, I really want to be calling this. If he takes pole here and I don't get, oh man. Ben is an all-time great. He's a lovely man. He's an all-time great. If we had a commentary hall of fame, he'd be in the commentary hall of fame. He is an outstanding broadcaster. And if no one's ever seen that amazing Andretti and Montoya battle from the year 2000, treat yourself on YouTube today. It is just glorious, raw, exciting commentary as it should be heard by Ben Edwards. And I've talked to him about that, and I had the great privilege of working with him last year at Le Mans, at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And there are just little moments in the job where he was handing over to me to do the final shift, and it was really nice that Ben was there, and getting to work with these people is I'm a broadcast nerd as well as an F1 fan, and it's cool when you get to work with these people. So it was tough taking over from him because his standards are so high, right? In terms of consistency, he is just so good and had been for such a large period, such an early period of his career. He was doing Formula One in the early 90s. So stepping in, replacing him. And then, yeah, we had this thing where he did qualifying and then I came back in for the second Austrian race. And the relief of getting out of that hotel room was sizable. And if ever you need reminding, and I've never needed reminding how fortunate I am to do this job, but that week, not being able to commentate and just being stuck in a hotel room was the last reminder I will ever need about how fortunate I am to get to do the gig, because it was a little bit like A Christmas Carol, right? It was like, okay, let's find out if you didn't have this dream job. Let's find out what it would be like if you had to suddenly stop commentating. And yeah, I didn't love it. Wasn't a fan.
Formula One celebrates 75 years this year, Alex. A true milestone for the sport. 2024 delivered with 7 drivers taking multiple wins in the season, which has never happened before. 2025. Now, for those at the time of recording, this is done just after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend, so race 5. Oscar Piastri taking the lead in the Drivers' Championship thanks to his brilliant and mature performance in Jeddah. People thought Lando Norris was maybe going to be the one to beat this year, but it seems as though Oscar Piastri has upped his game.
He definitely has. Certainly in qualifying, he's been outstanding. I think what's really impressive about Oscar in the 3 years he's had, well, this is his third season. So the 2 years and 5 races he's had at the time of recording is the fact that he's able to be asked by the team, okay, you need to improve your mid-stint tyre management. And by the end of the season, he's done so. He then targets, okay, so you were roundly beaten 20-4 up against Lando, one of the best qualifiers on the grid. Can you improve that? He's not been a tenth away from pole position or has been on pole position in every single session this year, including sprint qualifying. So to be beaten 20-4 and then come back and start your season either within a tenth of pole position or being on pole position, that is an outstanding driver who's getting better with every single Grand Prix that he runs.
Absolutely. And how do you see the rest of the season going? Is it going to be a McLaren whitewash, or do you think there is still time for the likes of Red Bull, Mercedes, and Ferrari to somehow claw it back?
No, I think we are definitely in the territory where a breakthrough. These setup windows for all of the big 4 teams are so narrow that I think you're going to get a swing depending on track, depending on temperature, depending on, does it rain on Friday night and wash away the grip? You're getting so many moments whereby just one element, one uncontrollable element can massively change the order. And of course, you've got the massive advantage. I think we've really seen it since the Belgian Grand Prix of last year. If you get clear air, if you can find a way to get your car freed up, they're all very, very competitive. McLaren obviously have the best baseline, but at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, we're talking about McLaren checking out and winning by a country mile. Oscar Piastri wins by 2.8 seconds. Only in Bahrain has he completely wiped the floor with everyone. The McLarens were racing themselves in China, but I do think it will be the driver's going to have to earn it all the way through. You've got one driver who's starting his 3rd championship, and you've got Lando Norris driving a car that plainly doesn't suit how he would like to manipulate the car around the circuit. So I think it's going to stay competitive. And the big one, Spanish Grand Prix, do we get a change in the competitive order when they start the different load tests on the front wing, which of course affect a Formula One car so much in this current regulation set? That's the defining question for the entire season. Because if not, McLaren are going to eke away, aren't they, as the season progresses?
If I could push you for a prediction, who would be your 2025 world champion, or is it too early to say?
Honestly, I have a post a pre-Silverstone rule about not predicting a champion, just purely because you've got to see the drivers basically get to that stage. Obviously looking very, very good for Oscar at the moment. Only 5 races in. Oscar's had the start that Lando wanted. I think it would have calmed Lando down an awful lot if he got that start to the campaign. But he has a huge amount of talent, and it's such a long season. We're going to December. So the problem, you look at the timing of the rain shower in Melbourne, Oscar would be a long way clear if that hadn't come down, but it did. And it's how you react to those moments. And, you could easily see that at other races. It's such a long way to go. I don't think you can call it. I don't think you can call it between teams. And look, if we'd had this conversation a year ago, it would have been like Max Verstappen, Red Bull, say goodnight, off we go. He's going to win very, very early. And then, of course, McLaren end up as constructors champions. And we had so many amazing races when the first few of the year looked like it was going to be another 2023. So way too early for predictions. But I'm really enjoying. I'm just really enjoying. Like, I called Oscar Piastri winning the Formula 3 championship 5 years ago. In 2020, in the COVID year, where the season was barely over 70 days long, and now he's the leader of the world championship. Things are moving pretty quickly.
Formula One has progressed so much over the years, Alex, with so many spectacular moments, controversial ones along the way as well. But I think that's part of what makes the sport what it is. You can't have the entertainment without the sport, and you can't have the sport without the entertainment. But in regards to how the 75 years have progressed and what the future lies ahead of the sport, I'm really excited to see how 2026 and beyond goes because the field is a lot closer compared to what it used to be. Decades ago, drivers used to struggle to be within 107% of pole position. Now you've got the entire field of 20 cars, it'll be 22 from next year. You know, what we saw in Jeddah, I think it was like 1.5 seconds, no more than that, between the entire field in Q1. It's astonishing what we are seeing.
It's great, and the element of it being so competitive and so many great teams in there. We've obviously got a massive rule change coming in for next year, but that budget cap and the teams agreeing to it, it was a very un-Formula One thing to do if you look at the history of the entire championship, but it has ensured that the teams are worth a lot. The sport is heading in a great direction, and it's so good that it's so competitive. You used to have drivers on pole position by 1.5 seconds, let alone the entire field covered by that. And that's in the late 90s, by the way. That's not way back. That's well, I suppose it is way back now. But I'm just saying, in recently modern history, you did have drivers in the late 90s on pole by 1.5 seconds or more. So Formula One's in an ultra competitive place, and long may it continue.
Long may it continue indeed with all the drivers that are coming through the ranks. The team like Cadillac, who are the new team coming onto the Formula One grid, who got Audi coming in for the first time in Formula One history. I honestly can't wait. I really cannot wait. In terms of you, Alex, before I talk about the future holds for you, you've also commentated on I think the 24 Hours of Le Mans and Indy 500. How different was commentating on those respective races compared to how you were used to over at F1, F2, and F3? What did you have to do differently for those compared to what you've done in Biggin Hill?
You had to start from scratch, basically. So covering the Indy 500 for Sky Sports, that was a different type of broadcast because you were covering the ad breaks that NBC took. So it was myself and Tom Gaymore, and we were doing commentary in the ad breaks. And that is about just over a third of the race when NBC did it because of the amount of advertising that they sell, because it's their biggest one of the year. So you're doing a huge chunk of it. So you're not, we were relying that day on the lead commentary and the main commentary team of the brilliantly diffy James Hinchcliffe and Townsend Bell. And then, so that was a slightly more analytical one, but you start from scratch. You have a big board of notes, and your driver identification has to change because obviously they do different liveries for the Indy 500 as well. So even if you're an IndyCar fan, which I am, you've got to relearn what's going on there, and it's completely different strategy, different rules. So you're starting from scratch. And then Le Mans is the next version up in terms of commentary prep because there are so many different stories, such a big field, and you've got to be up to date on absolutely all of it. You've got to place it in context of the World Endurance Championship, but recognize that it's this incredible spectacle, this incredible monument of motor racing, Le Mans. I mean, it is such a special event, and to have had a chance to cover them, I mean, that is childhood dream stuff, which is cliched, but it's also true, right? That the races you want to do as a broadcaster are your home race. So that's the British Grand Prix. That was the be all and the end all for me. That was like, if I get to do that on live British TV, I've done everything I ever set out for, and I've been very fortunate to do that with Channel 4. And then can you do the big races? So can you do Monaco? Can you do Indy 500? Or can you do Le Mans? And yeah, it makes me happy and will make me happy forever that I've done those races. It's brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Will Buxton call his first Indy 500 this year. I mean, more people have walked on the moon than have got to cover the Indy 500 for US television. So good luck to Will for that one. Le Mans is it's out of this world. It's such a special event.
I love the 24 Hours Le Mans. Loved it more than I used to. And I think that's partly down to the fact that it's become more accessible, these
Mm,
particular races, the Indy 500 and the 24 Hours Le Mans, because people used to struggle to watch these races. Perhaps they
mm.
weren't exactly covered in the way that we are seeing them now. But because people have been seeing stuff on social media, for instance, it's made them want to watch it more and more. I don't know if it's because of the broadcasters, I don't know if it's because of particular drivers or teams, or it's just the fact that it's such a historical, unique motor racing event, whether it's the 24 Hours Le Mans or the Indy 500 or the Monaco Grand Prix. Take your pick.
I completely agree. I think it's honestly when it's the biggest race for a championship, there's something amazing about watching. When you get a first time winner of the Indy 500, or Antonio Fuoco bursting into tears. He's a driver I covered in GP3 and Formula 2, and he's having his greatest day because he's about to win Le Mans for Ferrari, and he's in the garage and he can't keep it together. Those are the moments that link nicely all together. So when you see the biggest race for a championship, but beyond that, a historic race, a race that people have been trying to win for a century, then brilliant. It doesn't get better than that in sport.
From the real life sport to the virtual side of motorsport, esports have become a more increasingly talked topic. We've seen so many different esports champions over the years. You think of Thomas Ronhart, I think of Brendan Lee, so many top esports drivers in the series. How do you say maybe the future of esports within F1 is going to have in, let's say, 10 years' time or 15 years' time?
I would love it to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I love the event that has been put on. I've been fortunate to be part of that on and off since 2020. And I remember when that was the only sport in town during the pandemic, and we were running virtual Grand Prix, and people were all in their living room across the world, and just bizarre that there was no other sport able to run for obvious reasons, and we had Ben Stokes and Sergio Aguero up against Alex Albon and Charles Leclerc, George Russell. Brilliant, really. That there was able to find something and to capture the public's attention. I'm in total awe of the amount of hours that the esports drivers and the sim racers put in, because they're devoting their entire lives to. I mean, we think the margins are close in Formula One at the moment. You've got to be millisecond good, because everyone is so close together there. You are talking about tiny margins. And it was great. It was great to go back this year and have that opportunity to call the championship again. And it was really nice because I'd never done a LAN event. I'd never had an event where, because it'd all been remote, and I'd joined the COVID year, it was all remote. And then this was the first opportunity I had to hear the drivers get annoyed at a moment like that, see people storming out of the arena. It's just great theatre, great drama, and wonderful to be part of it. Now, your question was, where is it in 10 to 15 years? I hope bigger and bigger and bigger. I hope the viewing figures are through the roof. I hope the participation numbers are through the roof. I hope it can be another avenue to a career in professional motorsport, because that has to be the link to the real world is what you're looking for there. And I've seen some nice things in, say, the Race of Champions, where we've seen some very talented sim racers and esports winners get a chance to go up against some real life world champions. And Lucas Blakely beat Sebastian Vettel in a race a couple of years ago. It's just wonderful to have that link between the two. So I just hope it grows. I just hope it continues to grow and continues to see audience numbers and participation numbers through the roof.
I mean, I've enjoyed Lee racing myself as well.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it. I think the digital side of things will continue to progress, and I think more and more esports stuff will be organised, whether they be motorsport or with football or wherever it may be.
Mm.
In particular for those who have limited budgets compared to, let's say, racing drivers or wherever everyone is in the automotive world or in the sports broadcast world, it's at least another avenue for them to get themselves involved in, isn't it?
It is, and that's the thing. It's great that you're absolutely right with the budget question there. That is absolutely everything. You want motorsport and the possibility to get involved in it to be as accessible as possible, and esports and sim racing provides that. And I hope we'll continue to provide that in a more formalized way.
I agree with that as well. For you, what does the future hold for Alex Jacques? What do you think the next 10, 15, or even 20 years has in stock for you?
20 years, man, that's a question. I'm very, very happy and very fortunate to cover Formula One, and I hope that's come across in the chat. I would just like to carry on doing it for as long as possible. I love commentating on motor racing. It's just the most wonderful opportunity to have, to be part of a great broadcast team. I'm very fortunate to work with the team at F1 TV. I'm incredibly fortunate to work with the team at Channel 4. These are such hardworking, talented people, and I love being part of that overall team. I have some brilliant co-commentators that I get to work with across the course of a Formula One season, and I would like to keep doing it as long as I feel that I have something to say. And I don't see that expiring anytime soon. 20 years? I don't know about 20 years, but I'd love to keep telling the stories. Certainly, I get a kick out of telling the stories of drivers that I've seen come through the ranks as well. When you see Max Verstappen put in a generational pole lap like Suzuka, and you're like, man, that's one of the best quali laps ever. We got to enjoy that together. We got to analyze it on the post show together. We got to broadcast that. That's amazing. So I'm very keen to do that for as long as the audience and the teams will have me. And then it'll be someone else's turn eventually. That's always the way that it works in broadcasting. But hopefully I can have a number of years more behind the microphone and continue to say something and continue to tell the stories, because that's the gig. That's the gig. Tell the viewer things that they don't particularly know at the start of the broadcast. Sell why things are important. Upend expectations. Like, say Monaco, when if you're a casual viewer, you might be thinking, oh, a kid from Monaco winning the Monaco Grand Prix. Where's the significance in that? Well, let me tell you his backstory. Let me tell you why this isn't a rich kid winning in rich kid land. Why? Let me tell you the emotional story behind it. As long as I have the space and the opportunity to do that, I'll be commentating for many years if people will have me.
What would be your advice on those wanting to work within motorsport, particularly within broadcast media?
Take all the opportunities you can. Email everyone you can. Always email on a Tuesday. People have emails to catch up on the weekend. So if you're trying to get on a producer's radar, make sure you do it on a Tuesday, because everyone's cleared their backlog on a Monday. You don't want your email to be dismissed or missed. Try and just get into people's inboxes. Try and get people's attentions. Show that you can do a variety of skills. Don't be a one-trick pony. If you want to do broadcast, be aware that sometimes you're going to have to be pretty good at a written report. If you want to do social media, be aware that sometimes the route to social media will come elsewhere. If you want to be in marketing, be aware. There's just so many things that broadcast is not just found through broadcast anymore. But have a show reel to go at all times that you can access, that you can send, that you can say, hey, I'm available. Producers are busy and stressed, and they need answers. They don't need stress, they need answers. And if you can be that answer at the right moment through a show reel that shows the work that you've done, a condensed version of a long list that you can send, then there are huge opportunities out there, and there is a chance to move forward very quickly if you can then graft, if you get that chance.
I'd agree with that as well. And I've spoken to people about this, and I've mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great platform to find, for example, freelance stuff for you to get yourself involved in. Would having a website as well of your own help? Because I think that's how apparently professionals invest more in those who are wanted to pursue in a career that, eludes them.
That's the answer, right? That's part of being the answer. So if a producer's like, yeah, I like the sound of that, let me just do a little bit more research on that person. If you have got your name and you're nice and prominent at that point with, again, more of your work, maybe expanded version of the show reel or whatever you've sent, then look, not everyone's going to be able to afford that straight out the bat. These things aren't cheap to put together, and domain names and hosting and all of this. But if you can even have a basic space, then there's a massive opportunity to just make it as easy as possible for the people who decide who are in those positions to hear and see your work. And sometimes a website can be useful for that.
Alex, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time in speaking to us today, and hopefully we'll have you again on Cairns Catches Up in the near future.
Great to speak to you, sir. And yeah, really enjoyed the chat.
No problem. Thank you very much.